Go on.
I hereby call the meeting of the Brockton City Council for Monday, November 23rd, 2020, 7 p.m. to order. Please stand and join me in saluting our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Clerk.
We have the acceptance of the November 9th, 2020 City Council meeting.
Accepted and placed on file.
We have the report of the Ordinance Committee for its meeting of November 5th, 2020.
Accepted and placed on file.
Report of the Finance Committee for its meeting of November 17th, 2020.
Accepted and placed on file.
Appointment of Stephen Hooke of 31 Hammond Street, Brockton, to the Traffic Commission for a 3-year term.
That's referred to Finance.
Allison Cogliano to the position of Assistant City Solicitor, part-time for a 3-year term, effective November 18, 2020.
Councilors, these next two items, 5 and 6, are actually communications, so that will be accepted and placed on file.
Matthew Albanese to the position of Assistant City Solicitor, part-time for a 3-year term, effective November 30th, 2020.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the mayor advising that he has changed Attorney Anthony Donegan's status as an Assistant City Solicitor for the City of Brockton from part-time to full-time, effective November 16, 2020.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the Chief of Police. Department requests an authorization to expend $8,000 in donated funds from an anonymous source to be used for K-9 supplies and equipment as needed for the Brockton Police Department.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the mayor recommending the same.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the CFO relative to the same.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the DPW Commissioner regarding the October 30th, 2020 MADEP grant received by Brockton DPW Recycling in the amount of $68,000. This is a no-match grant which will be used to defray the cost of purchasing the 96-gallon wheel containers for the curbside recycling program.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the mayor recommending the same.
Accepted and placed on file.
Communication from the CFO relative to the same.
Accepted and placed on
We
file.
have a communication from the mayor authorizing the City of Brockton Public Works Department to transfer $1,400,000 of the $2 million that was originally appropriated to fund the water main replacement on Thomas Street, Thomas Circle, and Moss Avenue. While this transfer is not required to be authorized by the City Council, CFO Troy Clarkson and the mayor committed to communicate with the City Council about the way in which these funds would be expended. The mayor respectfully requests that this communication be referred to the City of Brockton Finance Committee so that this matter may be further discussed.
Per the mayor's request, this is referred to Finance.
Communication from the CFO relative to the same.
Accepted and placed on file.
Yep. From the Executive Director of PERAC, Public Employee Retirement Administration Commission, submitting the amount to be appropriated for the Brockton Retirement System for fiscal 22, which commences July 1, 2021.
Accepted and placed on file.
An ordinance to provide noise control and establish and to enforce civil infractions for violations. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Brockton, a new ordinance to be added to the revised ordinances, Chapter 14, Offenses, Miscellaneous, as Section 14-49 are in the next section available. And City Council, September 14, 2020, read and refer to Standing Committee on Ordinance. That report was favorable as amended.
The question is on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? The amendment passes. Now the question is on passage to a third reading as amended by a hand vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? The ordinance passes.
Order that the sum of $2 million is appropriated to pay costs of replacing water transmission main, piping, and valves, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 8, Paragraph 5, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefor. All or any portion of this borrowing may be obtained through the Mass Clean Water Trust. Any premium received by the city upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this order, less any such premium applied to the payment of the cost of issuance of such bonds or notes may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this order in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 20, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. Further order that the city treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44A, any and all bonds or notes of the city authorized by this vote, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board of Commonwealth of Massachusetts may require. In council, November 9, 2020, passed with third reading by a hand vote.
The question is on adoption by a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianary?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Nicastro? Yes. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
That's 10 in the affirmative, 0 in opposition.
The order
Madam
is
President.
adopted.
Make a motion for reconsideration in the hopes it does not prevail.
Second.
A motion's been made for reconsideration. Hopes it does not prevail, and properly seconded. All those in favor of reconsideration? All those opposed? Reconsideration fails.
Order the City Council reviews an exemption from the residency requirement in accordance with the revised ordinances of the City of Brockton, Article 3, Section 2-110, City of Brockton Ordinance Waiver of Residency, in reference to James Ploufle of the Building Department. In council, November 9, 2020, ready to refer to the Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on adoption by a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianary?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Nicastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The order is adopted.
Appointment of James Ploufle of 3 Carriage House Drive, Lakeville, Mass., to the position of Building Superintendent of the Public Property Department of the City of Brockton for a 3-year term ending November 2023. In council, November 9, 2020. Read and refer to the Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on confirmation by a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianary?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Nicastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The appointment is confirmed.
Order and acceptance of expenditures of the donation in the amount of $1,000 from Carney Environmental to Police Department, no match required. In council, November 9, 2020. Ready to refer to the Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on adoption by a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianary?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Nicastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The order is adopted.
Order of acceptance and expenditures of the grant award in the amount of $25,600 from the Mass Emergency Management Agency, Fiscal 20 Emergency Management Preparedness Grant, to City of Brockton Emergency Management, Fiscal 20 Emergency Management Preparedness Grant Fund. In council, November 9, 2020. Ready to refer to the Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on adoption by a roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianary?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Nicastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The order is adopted.
Have the acceptance and expenditures of the grant award in the amount of $13,265 from the U.S. Department of Justice, Fiscal 2020 Patrick Leahy Bulletproof Vest Partnership Grant, to Police Department, Fiscal 2020 Patrick Leahy Bulletproof Partnership Grant Fund. In council, November 9, 2020. Ready to refer to Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on adoption by roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianieri?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
DeCastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The order is adopted.
Resolved to invite Rob May, Director of Planning, and the Chairperson of the Zoning and Planning Boards to discuss means to inform the public as to the lack of availability of adult-use retail marijuana in the City of Brockton. In council, November 9, 2020, read and referred to the Standing Committee on Finance. That report was favorable.
The question is on adoption by roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianieri?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
DeCastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
10 in the affirmative.
The order is adopted.
Resolved to invite Mr. John O'Donnell, as he is the Chairperson of the Brockton Board of Assessors, and any other person he wishes to accompany him, to come before a committee of this council to discuss the result of the recent comprehensive reassessment of all classes of property in the City of Brockton, the resulting proposed 2021 property valuations, and information related to the valuation and tax rate. And council, November 9, 2020, read and referred to Standing Committee on Finance. That report was unfavorable.
The question is on adoption by roll call vote. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
I don't know.
Now, she's got to vote if she's sitting there.
Yeah, you have to vote. If you want to not vote, you have to state your reason why.
Because we haven't heard from Mr. O'Donnell yet, so what are we voting on?
So,
You're voting to vote favorably in support of the resolve.
Are we going to hear from Mr. O'Donnell?
So Mr. O'Donnell is here this evening, Counselor. He will, at the end of the agenda, he will address us with what he was going, his presentation.
Okay.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes. Madam,
I mean, we're in the middle of a roll call. I don't know if we, I saw your hand go up, but
The roll's already been called.
yeah, but I think we need some clarification exactly what because if this matter came in unfavorably, and are we voting yes to say we are with it as unfavorable, or yes, we are on the opposite side of things? How does that work?
A no vote would be unfavorable.
Okay.
Okay, no.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianieri?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
No.
Monahan?
Yes.
DeCastro?
No.
Rodriguez?
No.
Thompson?
Yes.
That's 6 in the affirmative, 4 in opposition.
the order is adopted.
Ordered acceptance of an anonymous donation of amount of $8,000 to be used to purchase equipment for K-9-related needs. For an anonymous donation to Police Department, there is no required match for these funds.
Refer to Finance.
Order appropriation of $68,000 from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, excuse me, to Sustainable Materials Recovery Program grant to Department of Public Works Sustainable Material Recovery Program Fund.
Refer to Finance.
Resolve as follows, that the City Council shall recommend approval for the City of Brockton to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Town of West Bridgewater for all properties seeking water and sewer connections with Brockton. That the City Council shall recommend approval for the City of Brockton to approve the water connection for the 46-acre parcel approved by the Brockton Water Commission and execute the intermunicipal agreement with West Bridgewater for the water and sewer connections for said parcel.
Refer to Finance. Councilors, as just mentioned, Mr. O'Donnell, our assessor, was on the agenda for last meeting, but he was unable to be here due to health reasons. So I did speak with Mr. O'Donnell to see if he could speak before us this evening. So if there are any objections, is there any objections for him to come before us this evening?
No.
Seeing none? Mr. O'Donnell. We also have our CFO here as well. Yes, oh,
Shirley.
of course, Mr., yes.
It's a late file, isn't it?
There's a-
Late file first?
I'm sorry, you want to do the late file first?
Yeah.
Sure, sorry, Mr. Clarkson, we'll You have a motion for a late,
Motion for a late file.
Second.
a motion's been made and properly seconded for a late file?
And make a motion to act on this tonight under suspension of the rules. Mr. Clarkson's here to explain it.
Perfect.
Second.
Communication from the mayor in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, recommending that the city council authorize, excuse me, the total transfer of $15,136,093 from the general fund to the stabilization fund for state aid. Excuse me. Communication from the CFO in accordance with Section 5 of Chapter 324 of the Acts of 1990, certifying the total transfer of $15,136,093 from the general fund to the stabilization fund for state aid. Draft state budget awaiting final approval. This transfer is being requested to accommodate the extraordinary nature of this fiscal year, given the delay in the state budget. During fiscal 21 budget planning process, the mayor, working closely with the superintendent of schools, the school CFO, and the CFO's office, developed a conservative approach to revenue estimates and balanced the budget on those estimates. This transfer request represents the differences between the original projections and the current Cherry Street estimates from the Mass Department of Revenue. While it is important to vote this transfer to finalize the total appropriation, excuse me, before setting the tax rate, something that will be done after the classification hearing on December 2nd. The order is an appropriation of $15,136,093 from the general fund to the stabilization fund for state aid.
Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, members of the City Council. On behalf of the mayor, I appreciate you taking this up this evening under a suspension of the rules. As I noted to you in the email I sent you Friday afternoon, this is an extraordinary circumstance. So when we were before you presenting the proposed budget for this fiscal year, we were in a very, and still are, in a very uncertain time. We intentionally were very conservative in terms of our estimates for both state aid and Chapter 70 aid, which is education aid from the Commonwealth. I believe firmly that we were well served collectively by that conservative approach, and we were able to begin the fiscal year and generally maintain our operations, reduce the need for layoffs on the city side, and minimize the need for layoffs on the school side. As you know, we were able to do that through transferring some money from last year's budget and into stabilization, and then transferring it back for the purposes of this budget. We left about more than $1 million in current positions that are vacant, unfilled. So we really worked hard to put together, I think, a budget that was very lean, but that allowed us to continue services. And at that time, we knew this moment would come. What we did not know is that we would be in the middle, near the end of November, actually, and still not have a budget voted by the Commonwealth. This is an extraordinary circumstance, and in more than 25 years in local government, I can't recall a time when the legislature voted a budget this late. We understand, I think, the need for that, but they are now poised to vote a budget, and the Commonwealth has issued cherry sheet numbers. And for those watching at home, the cherry sheet is the actual official document from the Commonwealth that lists the state aid that we will receive. So what we have sent to you was a spreadsheet that details our original projections for state aid and also the change in those numbers. And the good news is, because of our conservative approach, the final numbers coming from the state are a little more than $15 million more than what we had budgeted for. The reason I stand before you tonight is to ask you to transfer that money into the stabilization fund. Should you not do that, the money will still come from the state, but what will happen is it will, upon June 30th, it will accrue to free cash. And so the money wouldn't be available for appropriation until more than a year from now. And so what we're asking you to do is to simply transfer this excess state aid into the stabilization fund, where then the mayor and I will come back to you and ask via a supermajority, because it will be in the stabilization, to then further appropriate it. Some 10.5 million of this 15 million is Chapter 70 money, so we do anticipate at some point asking that to be appropriated to net school spending. Both the superintendent and the school CFO are aware of this action and are aware that we're here tonight asking you to do this. As always, we're in close contact with them, working closely with them on addressing their needs for this fiscal year. So this is an opportunity to, before we set the tax rate, to make this money available for future appropriation and to make sure that it can be used, should we so choose, in this fiscal year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Counselor Ianieri.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Mr. Clarkson. How are you?
Well, thank you.
And I'm pleased to hear that we're getting something that's well due to us, and it's been a long haul this fiscal year. But I think just in listening to the last couple of sentences, I think answered my question, because it was going to be that no matter what position we were in from this point going forward to June 30th, we're able to use this money for any type of other appropriations that we need because of any shortfalls that we have coming within our present budget. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So, and then if there is anything left at that point, would it also be able for us to be available for us to use as we prepare the next budget as well? Am I correct? If it's in stabilization or?
Yes, and any money that's in
Okay.
stabilization is available at the request of the mayor for appropriation.
Okay, that, I just want to clear my own head on that one there. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Counselor Nacastro.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for being here. I have your memo. Oh, I should tell you first, I wasn't able to hear Clerk Zioli read the order, so I assume it was, as you just summarized, to take in the 15 million and to put it in stabilization.
Yes.
Okay. The last paragraph of the email that you sent to all of us on Friday at 3:09, there's a statement in here: a delay in this would likely result in a delay in sending out tax bills. Just if you would expand on that for me.
Sure. The setting of the tax rate on an annual basis is based on the totality of the spending in a fiscal year. So that one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is what we would like to do is have this money transferred so that it's available, and when we fill out the official forms for the Department of Revenue, that includes the totality of the spending. So one of the consequences, should we delay, would be if this went through your normal process and wasn't taken up tonight, that it could delay in setting the tax rate and sending out those tax bills until that process was completed.
Okay, and we don't want these funds to stay in free cash, because that impacts the funds that the state would be willing to give us next fiscal year. Is that right?
Not necessarily, but if the funds go to free cash, the way that works is, so we have not yet had free cash certified for the fiscal year that ended last June. It just takes several months for that process to occur. So should these funds go to free cash, it'll be more than a year from now when they're certified, so they would become available for our use in the fiscal year 2023 budget. So it would make them not available now and delay it by more than a year. And so the funds are coming no matter what, but it really is whether or not we want to make them available for this year's budget or a subsequent budget. And because of the lean nature of this budget, particularly on the education side, I think the prudent thing to do is to put it in stabilization, rather than, one of the possibilities was to come with a suggestion of appropriating it to different departments. But I believe that would not be as respectful of the legislative process as this, because this allows us to then take the time collectively to consider how best to use the money, and will require the mayor and I to come back to you with a plan on amending the fiscal year 21 budget.
Well, that was, I think you just addressed my last question, which was, why wouldn't we want to do this? And that would be in case we wanted to spend it. We already had some spending in mind. But I prefer the savings account.
Yeah, that is, I believe, the prudent way to proceed because it allows us for a more open and collaborative process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
All set. Any other council? Councilor Cruz?
Thank you. So how much are we transferring into the stabilization fund?
$15,136,093.
And what will that make the stabilization fund? What will that bring it to? Approximately.
Approximately 25 million.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Any other councilors have any questions? Question now is on, we're voting on this item, is on adoption. There have to be a roll call vote, okay. Madam Clerk, please read the roll.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianieri?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Yes.
Monahan? Nicastro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
That's 10 in the affirmative.
The
Thank
order
you.
is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Since you're there, were you going to speak on the
Sure.
item with our assessor?
Let me just start out, and then John, who obviously is your chairman of the Board of Assessors and deals with the issues of property valuation on a daily basis, can speak to you about the detail. I thought that I could provide an introduction that draws a distinction between the amount of tax money we're able to spend every year and the value of the property. Because although there are some links between those two, the change in property values does not impact the amount of tax money we have to spend on an annual basis. So the amount of money that we can collect in property taxes, all forms, every year is called the levy limit, and that's a maximum amount that we can spend or collect by law. And every year that levy limit, and it's listed in your budget book, that's where Proposition 2.5 comes from, right? So every year that levy limit can be increased by 2.5% plus a number called new growth. And the new growth is the actual tax revenue from new construction, whether that's a brand new home or an addition on an existing home. So that levy limit, which for purposes of discussion is about $155 million, does not change no matter what the values are. And so it's just important to keep that in mind as we talk about revaluation and the value of property, because the property is at its highest value now, some $9.1 billion that it's ever been in the history of the city. And so the values are escalating. But that doesn't change the amount of money we can collect in taxes every year. And finally, before I introduce John, it's also important to keep in mind that the property, the value of the property is inversely proportional to the tax rate, right? So as your property values go up, your tax rate goes down because that's the formula that gets us to that maximum tax levy limit. So for the last 5 years in a row, the tax rate in Brockton has gone down as a direct result of the fact that the property values for the last several years have continued to climb. So increased property value in the city does not mean increased collection of taxes. And so the property values could continue to escalate, but the amount of money we can collect does not go up based on the escalating values. We are set at that limit, and the only way we can exceed that limit is if there's a vote by this body to either override Proposition 2.5 or exclude Proposition 2.5 either, and you've done this from time to time for projects, or what's called a capital exclusion, which is a one-time exclusion for 1 year, and then it goes back down. So to set the stage for a discussion of values, I just thought it was important to offer that reminder that even though the values are going up, that doesn't mean we're collecting more money in taxes. It just shuffles the deck in terms of how that money is collected and what the formula is for making that collection. Happy to answer any questions on that before I turn it over to John.
Councilor Cardoso.
Hi, Troy. So you know this is all very confusing, right? So how do you explain to folks at home that their property taxes are based on what they owe in the home, what the home is worth? Based on what you just said, if their homes are now valued at, let's use a number, 400,000, but last year it was 350,000. The taxes go up for that person, correct? Because now their home is valued at a higher price.
They do, and that's the level of specificity that John can address. But yes, I'm not here to say that tax bills won't be going up for some folks. But for others, they will go down because, again, the total amount that the city collects is constant and not dependent on the values. But because property values are going up so significantly in the city, there are some properties, because of the nature of the real estate market, that their value increases to a greater degree than other properties. So people may see their tax bill, even though the rate is going down, they may see their tax bill go up. That means, though, that their property is worth a lot more than it was. And so it does, for some, create a higher tax bill, but it also, at the same time, creates greater equity in that property.
Okay, because I think we need to be clear on that, because people are concerned about the taxes going up. You can't really explain to them that we've had a decrease for the last 5 years, because they don't see it that way. Whenever they get a bill, it's going up, what they're
Right.
paying. So, yeah, so I think that was my question. Then I'll ask Mr. O'Donnell, if you don't mind.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening, Mr. O'Donnell. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. Thank you for answering. I sent you some questions ahead of this meeting. Can I just go over a couple of them, just for the public?
Yes.
Okay. So the major concern for a lot of folks, like I just said to Troy, is their increase in their taxes and how the taxes are assessed on their home. So when folks call me and they say, my taxes are going up, I need to be able to explain to them how they're assessed. So if you wouldn't mind just answering some of these questions.
Sure, but what you should do is actually refer them to my office.
I do. I have, but that's another issue, and we'll get there. But the first question, who's responsible for data input on the tax assessors database?
The three assessors, myself, Chris Pike, Julie Castor, and our reval technician, Peg O'Sullivan. And the clerks, all they can make changes to name changes and seal date change. That's it.
Okay, so the clerks can't do that, just your staff, the assessors?
Four of us.
The four of us, okay. How frequent are reassessments scheduled, and by whom?
The city is required by the Department of Revenue. We reassess every year. This year was what's called a 5-year certification year. So it's it used to be called full reval, but then the years in between we do an increment assessment. But the only difference between the full reval and the increment years is we have to do a field review, and we have to do public disclosure. So the field review is basically typically we did it 25,000. We have roughly around 25,000 parcels. So we'd print the property record cards up, and we'd have 6 to 8 field workers come in, and they'd drive the city. But this year what we did is, back in January, we met with Tyler Technology, and we re-imaged the whole city. So there's new images of every property on the property record cards, and then we have it's called a geocyclorama. Basically, it's like the Google. They came around, and so there's probably at least 10 views of every property in the city. We can look down the sides, we can look, and we can actually measure from this service. So that's how they did their field review this year. They were supposed to do it in Ohio, but due to the pandemic, they did it. There was people in Pennsylvania doing it, people in Massachusetts doing it. So they did it with that technology. We're the first community in Massachusetts to utilize it, and we were approved by the Department of Revenue.
So it's like a virtual way of...
Yes, exactly. It's the way of the future. It's how it will be done in the future, but we were the first ones. City of Boston also will be doing it next year, I believe, on their reval. And then public disclosure is, when we get our preliminary certification, we have to post all values. So we got that back on October 28th, and we had the values on the website, plus we had them in our office, and we also had them over the library. So
Okay, how long does that stay up?
it was supposed to be for 5 days, we did it for 8 days. The values are still up.
They're still up?
And we actually, this year, at the recommendation of Council Farwell, we updated our property record cards on that same date. So our property record cards has all the FY21 information on them.
Okay, and then how do they assess, I know you and I talked a little bit about one particular resident that I sent to you
Yeah.
regarding the square footage in her home and the amount of rent that she collects. Can you speak to that a little bit and how that,
Rent is only utilized on any property that's 4 units and above. So like a 2 and 3 families, we only utilize a sales comparison approach, so it's all based on sales data. But yeah, I think your other question was where we get our income.
yeah, like how do you measure the square footage and how do you know how much rent someone's collecting?
We're required by the Department of Revenue to do, every 10 years, we're supposed to inspect every house. So we can utilize MLS data and a couple other services. But if someone called up and was questioning the GLA, gross living area, we would go out and physically measure the home.
Okay, all right. Let me see, I may, just a couple more. Quality measures and the accuracy of data changes. So how do you guys measure quality, that everything's being inputted correctly on the property cards?
I mean, before it's done, we discuss it. If it's a major change, it's done, the Board of Assessors vote on it. And also the Department of Revenue, the Division of Local Services, they check all our information. So they don't go down to the property card level, but when we sales data and all that, they verify all of that, so.
Okay. And then this is in reference to accessing your office. We talked a little bit about having handouts in different languages, and you stated you would do that. Sometimes the challenge is when people come into the office, look, this stuff is very confusing. And I find I consider myself someone who's sort of smart.
You're not alone. It's very confusing.
So imagine someone who doesn't speak the language and they don't. So how do we help our residents understand all of this in a simple, easy format, something that we can put together in different languages to give them so they understand, and then they're not calling. I'm sure you get people going into your office complaining and, and upset, because it's our money. We work hard for our money, right? So how do we mitigate some of that? How do we?
We have 2 bilingual employees, so we have that covered. If there's an issue, they can interpret for them. Like you said, like for the abatement season, I will come up with whatever we put out in English, we'll put out in Cape Verdean and Haitian. I might need you to help me with that part, but the Haitian I got covered. So anything we can do, yes. Any notice we put out from now on, we will put it out in multiple languages. I can guarantee you that.
Okay. And then the last question, when was the last audit of the tax assessment done?
We're audited every year by the Division of Local Services. We submitted our data on September 29th. They didn't finish their audit till November 13th. We got our full certification.
And then do we do any internal audits?
Not really, no.
Okay. Is there a reason for that?
I mean, I answer the Department of Revenue, to be honest with you. And if they find errors, then.
Okay. Thank you very much, John, for answering those questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam President.
Councilor Castro.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. O'Donnell. As I mentioned to you before we started the meeting, I have more questions for you. I didn't know you were going to be here. I will contact you with them, though. Yeah. And here's the one question that I can think of that I remember. I think it's fair to say that a lot of valuations have gone up, and no matter how you slice it, a lot of tax bills are going to be increased over last year. So spend a minute and talk to us about exemptions that are available for some people.
Yeah. So basically, the 2 exemptions that people should look at this year is the deferring of taxes. It's a 41A. or 41C, excuse me. But it's only for people at 65, it's aged. But they can defer their taxes. Someone at 65 could defer their taxes until they sell their house at the age of 85. The interest rate, I believe, is 2.5%. But what happens is, say they die or whatever happens, or when they sell their house, the taxes are paid off. But if sometimes they don't get paid off, the property starts accruing at 16% and will go automatically into tax title. But typically, we just had one person that passed, and it was paid off right away. She did it for 2 years. So that's one thing. Then we have the hardship. And typically, not many people apply for hardship because it's age-based. But this year, we're going to lower the age base because of all the people out there in hardship. And they need to have a medical problem. And the medical problem has to be certified by a doctor. And the other is income-based, but that is subjective to the board. So the board votes on these. And it's about a 4-page form, and my girls can help. And, we just took one in today. So it's better for the person to come in or call, and we can give them all the information. It's all on the website, but still, it's a lot more information than for a typical exemption.
Okay, and in the first one that you mentioned, under 41C, what's the triggering event? The death of the homeowner, that it goes up to 16%?
Yeah, if they sold the house or death, yes.
Okay.
But they have so many, I think it's 90 days to pay off the back taxes.
So 90 days after
It would be death
someone
or
passes?
sale of the house.
Pardon?
Or the sale of the home.
Okay,
So say someone dies and it takes a while to do the estate, it doesn't kick in right away
okay,
to the sale of the home.
and that deferred amount, that would be reflected on a municipal lien certificate?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And there's also exemptions that are elderly-based,
Yeah, we
aren't
have
there?
two
Seniors.
senior exemptions, 17D, which is basically, it's an easier exemption to qualify for it. We don't take in, what's the best way to put it? It's $192 a year, and it's a pretty simple form that they fill out. And then we have a 41A, which is based on income and assets. So the first one is just based on assets, not income. The 17D, we don't request any income information, just assets. But your house isn't an asset, so it's a lot of people can potentially qualify. And again, it's age-based, 65.
And what is the maximum amount you can get
It's
reduced
$190 a year.
per year? All 4 quarters, wow. And what about 41A? What's the?
It's $750, but if you qualify for that, you also get your trash taken, so that's another $280.
Okay.
So it's worth over $1,000.
And who sets the income threshold?
It's set by the state, city.
State?
Yeah, state. The 17D changes every year. It's based on, I'm not sure what, it's based on, you guys do it for me. I'm not sure. It goes up, like it went up probably $7, $8 from last year. So it's based on something that Troy's office figures out for me.
So the state sets it for every community?
No, well, we came in front of you back when Jay was here, Mayor Carpenter, and we upped the 41A used to only be $500. We upped that to the $750, and then the 17D, we changed that. Before it was fixed at $175, so now it's gone up. It's like $192 now.
And how would we go about upping those again, given that our valuations have gone up so much?
It's something that we would bring, the mayor and I would bring in front of you.
Okay. Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yes, yeah, that's no problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam
All
President.
set, Counselor Thompson.
Good evening, Mr. O'Donnell.
Good evening.
Just a couple quick questions. Who is our service contractor for?
Tyler Technology.
And we've entered into some sort of scope of service
Yeah,
agreement
we
with
put
them
out an RFP.
through an RFP?
Yeah, through an RFP for the 5-year cert year.
So they do it in the 5 years.
No, it's a 1-year RFP.
Right, they do the 5-year assessment, your office does every
we
assessment in
do the
between.
interims. They assist us, but they, it's,
Okay. So they assist you with the every year, they do completely the 5-year?
exactly.
Okay. And then, does your office, and I don't know if this question was asked before, but does your office review their work to make sure that they are,
Yeah, they sent,
yes, acting within the methodology that they
Yes.
lay out?
yeah, that's what Peg O'Sullivan, my office, she works hand in hand with them. They do all the what we have to submit to the DOR, they do it together. So we're involved in the whole process.
Okay. And just going back to Councilor Castro's question, I believe my understanding or my research was that the state is the one that imposes the maximum on the abatement, and then the city decides
Exemptions, yes.
the exemption,
Yes.
and the city
Then we
decides.
can- Exactly, there's different ranges we could pick.
Right, and so but the state sets the maximum.
Yes.
Are we at max on all of them, or no?
No, the 41, it could go up higher. I think it go up to $1,000.
An additional 1,000?
Well, no, at the total, 1,000. We're at 750, I think it can go up to 1,000. I'll check tomorrow. I'll send an email to all you guys tomorrow.
Okay. Now, and that's a matter you would have to, if you were to increase it to the maximum, that's something you would have to come back to the
Come in
city
front of
council for?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
you're welcome.
All set, Counselor?
yeah.
Counselor Lally?
Thank you, Madam President. How are you?
Well, how are you?
All right. Just one or two, and if this is straying a little, let me know, and I'll wave off and come back on the second. But compared to other communities, how do we stack up, with our rate compared to residential, industrial?
Tax rate or?
Yeah.
I know what our split is between the.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, we're currently at, like, our portion of the tax levy for residential is 83.91% this year. It's gone up over the last 5 years, almost 5%. So we're putting more of a burden on the residential. We don't have enough commercial base. We're more of like a bedroom community. We're a large town. We don't have, we only have, I think, it's just over 16% between commercial, industrial, and personal property. And personal property counts for 3% of that. So, it's
Well,
low.
for a city our size, geez, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that this is something I'm sure that Mayor Sullivan's gonna bring back around. I know Mayor Carpenter pushed it. Pilot programs. We've got, a series of pilot programs, payment in lieu of taxes with large, nonprofits or really any nonprofit. But are there any sort of nonprofits or entities that aren't paying taxes that if they did it would make a
Sure.
big impact for us?
Let's go back to the pilots first. We only have 2 pilots in the city.
Okay.
One is from 1999, mere units. It's West Acres on Pleasant Street. So that is our only official pilot that we have.
Oh, jeez.
And then Father Bills, out of the goodness of their hearts, they pay, on 9 properties, they pay $27,000 a year, but it's voluntarily. We don't have any agreement with them. So but as far as properties that would help us, Brockton Hospital, they'd be the largest taxpayer in the city if they were not a nonprofit.
I know when Good Sam's switched to for-profit, that was a big.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But they would pay over $3 million a year just in real estate taxes. They have 1 property that's taxable, and the rest is non-taxable.
Okay. That would be interesting to see where we go with the pilots. But
Yeah.
that would be a monumental shift.
It's tough. They weren't too receptive back 5 years ago.
But I appreciate it. The other counselors asked
Thank
a lot
you.
of my other questions. Thank you, Madam
Thank you,
President.
Counselor. Any other counselors have any questions for Mr. O'Donnell? Counselor Mendez?
Hello. I was always under the impression that assessed values would always be a year behind, but from what you're describing, we're actually caught up to date, meaning that the price values of homes this year, is that going to reflect on next year's?
Yes.
It's
So this
usually
year's,
a year behind.
FY '21 assessed values are based on sales from calendar year 2019. So we are a year behind.
So
But 2019, the sales
was still high,
were high, and
but now it's even higher.
now this year it's even higher.
So, okay. And how often are the property cards reassessed? Are they done on a
Every
year?
year.
Every year. And that's the company that
Pilot
the city
technology,
hires
yes.
and does that. And what is our proposed tax rate? Our proposed tax rate for this year? What, I know that you gave us the book and that we're going to be voting on, so,
You guys vote on the shift. That's how you decide what, to shift the burden from the residents over to the commercial, industrial, and personal property. So that'll be covered on December 2nd.
okay. I'll just, because, and we're going to have our meeting, so hopefully I'll understand, yeah.
Any questions you
Thank-
have, just call.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councilors? Once again, Mr. O'Donnell supplied everybody with reading information, with a lot of information to read before the special meeting, which will be held on Wednesday, December 2nd, at 7 p.m. And Mr. O'Donnell, you'll be able to,
Yes.
councilors, if you have questions beforehand, if you want to get them to Mr. O'Donnell,
Yeah,
he's
please.
agreed to, that way he can answer them in his presentation before we do the tax hearing. Okay? Well, thank you again. Thank you, Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Councilor Nacastro.
on our late file that we just voted on prior to listening to this presentation, I'd like to make a motion for reconsideration in hopes that it fails.
Second.
A motion's been made for reconsideration, hopes it does not prevail. All those in favor of reconsideration? All those opposed? Reconsideration fails.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. So, Counselor, before we move on, I did mention the special meeting, December 2nd at 7 p.m. I would also like to thank all the counselors who participated in our first professional development workshop, which was held this past Saturday here at City Hall. It was very informative. I'd like to especially thank our presenters, Ms. Sandra Knight, our HR director, who was assisted by Lucia Centeo, our very own legislative counsel. Thank you, Attorney Shannon Resnick, for presenting, and past counselor at large, Tom Brophy, who actually took time out of his day and volunteered to come and spend the day with us, which it was very informative. Everybody that I spoke to felt that it was, it was very educational, which we wanted it to, and I think it was, hopefully it's something that we continue to do in the coming year, in 2021, with, with different subjects and different things that can come before us. But once again, I'd like to thank everybody. This Thursday, of course, is Thanksgiving, so we'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. On behalf of the full council, we wish everybody at home a happy, healthy Thanksgiving, and I don't know if any councilors have any moments of personal recognition. Nope. Councilor Lally.
Madam President, I would like to make the motion to enter executive session.
Second.
A motion's been made and properly seconded to enter into executive session. This is discussing strategy with respect to litigation as an open meeting may be detrimental to the city council's position, and the motion requires a roll call vote.
Asak?
Yes.
Cardozo?
Yes.
Cruz?
Yes.
Ianieri?
Yes.
Lally?
Yes.
Mendez?
Yes.
Monahan?
Yes.
Castro?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
That's 10 in the affirmative.
City council will not be returning after the executive session. Thank you, everyone.